Welcome to the Bikini Things podcast, where we talk everything from fitness and competing to mental health and living a healthy lifestyle. I'm your host, IFBB Bikini Pro, Laura Morche, here with IFBB Bikini Pro, Sammy Joe. We are so happy you're here with us. Let's get started. Today, we have a very special guest, fellow IFBB Bikini Pro, Tianna Weymouth. How are you, Tianna?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. For those that maybe don't know you, I'm guessing a lot of our listeners will know who you are. Could you just give like a quick introduction of like who you are and what you do?
Yeah, so I'm an IFBB Pro. My name's pronounced kind of weird. It's Ty and then Anna, so it's Tianna.
Oh, shoot.
But when people call me on stage like Tianna, this and that, I don't react because I'm so used to it.
Oh my god, that's so funny.
Yeah.
I literally would have never known that unless you said that.
It's spelled like Tianna, so a lot of people just assume it's Tianna, and I'm just too lazy to correct people.
Okay. So say it one more time for me, so that way I'm not.
So it's Ty Anna.
Tianna.
Tianna, yeah.
Tianna. Okay. Oh my gosh. All right. Well, my bad.
No, you're fine.
Now everybody knows.
I don't.
Yeah, now we've cleared it up for social media, so everyone.
Yeah, I just don't correct people because I'm just so lazy. And like throughout elementary school, everybody just called me that, so I was like, you know what, whatever, it's fine.
I've accepted it.
Yeah,
that's funny.
I get that a lot with my last name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I turned pro when I was 18. So a day after I graduated high school, I got into bodybuilding when I was 14. And what initially led me into bodybuilding was just recovering from an eating disorder. So I wanted to have a new outlook on health and just, like a lot of people think, oh, it's contradicting to go from eating disorder to bodybuilding. But for my case, it was like I woke up one day and I realized I don't want to be small and skinny. I want to actually grow and like see weight gain as a positive thing and like learn how to properly fuel my body, because I didn't know this, but I was unknowingly eating a lot less than I thought I needed to, if that makes sense. And bodybuilding showed me you're gonna need a lot more calories than you think, and I never thought that I'd ever be able to reach a certain point with calories or anything. And then once I like healed my relationship with food, then I decided I really want to make competing a thing. So then from 14 to 17, I built my physique in like accordance to the bikini division. And then I started competing at 18, and then now we're here.
Yeah.
How long did you compete for before you went to nationals?
I
qualify.
I did 2 regional shows, and then I did 1 national show. And then my second national show, I turned pro.
That's amazing.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So it was a fast journey. I didn't think that I was going to get my pro card that year. I thought that I'd just be chasing it year after year. So it's still just a huge blessing to me. And I still wake up every day and I'm like, how is this real? Because it's surreal, like being on that pro stage.
Yeah.
How do you feel? So you were 18 when you turned pro. How old are you now?
I'm 20 now.
20. That's so awesome. How do you feel in terms of like where you're at in life and balancing, like, are you in school, things like that, with being a pro athlete, and also you've made this a business for yourself too. So how do you balance those? Like, what does that look like for you?
So with school, I have the privilege of being online for school, and I also changed my major to an English major. So it was initially business marketing, but in my opinion, with our industry and everything, you learn a lot about business marketing throughout all of this. And I'm not saying that I know everything, but I was just thinking I might as well just change my major to something that I'm passionate about, and then I can learn about business and other like entrepreneurial things throughout, social media, marketing, all that stuff. Like you can just pick up on those things over time. So I was like, okay, I'm going to do an English major now. That way I can actually be passionate about my schoolwork, and it'll be easier to get everything done. Because at the end of the day, I do want to do bodybuilding and like this whole thing like for as long as I can. And obviously school, family, that always comes first, but just having that safety net with school, knowing that I'm doing something that I love, that gives me more reassurance that I can make everything else work around me. So I am I start school in September. Yeah, so I'm off of school right now, which is why I usually compete in the summertime, so I have more time to focus on bodybuilding. And then posing coaching, I do that year round. And then like with family, I have the privilege of being really close to my parents. So I live really close to my mom. So I'll see her pretty much every day. And, you know, it's just a balancing act.
That's amazing.
That's awesome.
I'd love to take a step back, and because your journey is so unique. I think I know of maybe one or two other athletes that turned pro when they were teens. Like there was a gal down here in Southern California, Raquel Simons, years ago that did that. But I have to imagine being a bodybuilder, it's a pretty high maintenance lifestyle.
Yeah.
And you mix that in with high school. What was that experience like? Like, can you paint a picture for us? Like, were people
I love
excited? Did they think you were weird? Like, what was that like for you?
So at first, I don't think anybody, so I didn't tell anybody like, oh, I'm in prep or anything like that. I've always been a gym rat, if that makes sense. So in high school, that's what I was known as. So they would just see me going straight to the gym after school, or, you know, bringing my own meals to school, this and that. So they didn't think anything too like, oh, that's weird, because they're just used to it at this point. And senior year, I did dual enrollment, so I took college courses in senior year of high school. So I was on a college campus for half of the day, and then on the high school campus for half of the day. And college life and high school life, completely different. College, people just mind their own business. People really don't care what you're doing. Like, we're adults at this point. High school, everybody cares about what everyone's doing. So it's like, I had nobody like noticing me for the first half of the day, and then the next half of the day, everybody's like, what are you doing? Like, blah, blah, blah. And I'm just, you know, a lot of people just, I wouldn't say they thought it was weird, but they just didn't understand, and I didn't expect them to. So my philosophy was, I'm just going to worry about myself. If people think I'm weird, so be it. I really don't care. I just kind of learned how to tune out any noise or any outside opinions, because at the end of the day, they don't matter. You know, like, life after high school, like, people have a rude awakening in high school. You know, you're like, you're surrounded by clique groups, popularity, this and that. And then you go to college and you realize, hey, that's not going to carry you through life. Like, being popular, being captain of the cheer team, that's not going to make you successful. Like, I hate to break it to you. So I told myself that, and I was like, I'm just going to tune out all of this noise, and I'm just going to go do my own thing. And I'm so thankful that I did do that, because now it's like, I don't have to worry about any of those like cliques or popularity things, because it really does not matter at the end of the day. It really doesn't. So that's kind of how it was throughout high school, just tuning out the noise, knowing that people are going to judge you no matter what. At this point, there's no point in hyperfixating over it.
Yeah.
That's a great point.
Yeah. And I'm so impressed with you too, just like how wise you are for your age.
I was literally just going to say the same thing.
Like, I'm just glad that social media wasn't really a thing when I was 20. Like, just you have so much emotional intelligence, and I think it really comes across in your social media posts. Yeah, I'm sure it helped having that mix of like college, which it really is more like adulthood, to give you a perspective that, okay, high school and cliques and all this stuff doesn't really matter.
Yeah, because for the longest time, like in middle school, I remember this was like the first day of 6th grade, I believe. I got home and I was like, I just want to fit in. I want to be like everyone else. Like, I want to be in that group. And then, you know, throughout middle school, I always wanted to fit in. And then high school came and I was like, F this, I don't want to fit in. Like, I want to actually be myself. So I just had that awakening when I stepped into the gym. I was like, okay, the vast majority of people in high school probably don't find this enjoyable yet, so, or will ever find it enjoyable, but I like it. So at this point, I'm just going to be me. So it's like finding yourself throughout life experiences and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point too, because I feel like as social media gets bigger, right, the fitness industry is more prominent, more people are entering the fitness industry, and more at such a younger age. So I think that's a great message to show to guys and girls, really, like, hey, you can be passionate about something and let the opinions of others just fly over your head, because if you're passionate about it, do it because it makes you happy. What they say and what they do have no effect on your happiness, your longevity, your, future.
Exactly.
So I feel like even for me, like the thought would have never crossed my mind to pack my own meal in high school.
Yeah.
I would have been terrified of what other people would have said, did, thought, and that was, so to hear that is like absolutely amazing.
Yeah, so I appreciate that. And like honestly, that's kind of my main message, because I do know that it's kind of strange. Now bodybuilding's like circling back to the younger generation, and it's becoming like a trend now, which is good and bad in a sense, because you want to make sure the younger generation is doing it for the right reasons, not just for clout or just to do prep just so they can say that they're doing prep, because I've seen that before and that leads to burnout, and I don't like it when people experience burnout because they don't get to see how amazing the sport really is when they reach that point. So it's like, my message and like my goal is to show the younger generation that, hey, you need to have good intentions and a good heart and like do this with passion, not just like do this because you want a certain outcome or you want to be famous or have clout, this and that, just because at the end of the day, it's like you versus you. You should be the one doing it because you love it, like you said.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I have 2 questions for you. How did your family respond to you getting into bodybuilding? Because I know I'm going to share a little funny story. The first time when I first met my husband, he had sent me, we were just talking at the time, he was my trainer. He had sent me a package of bodybuilding.com supplements. It was like protein, pre-workout, BCAAs, like the most basic of basics. And my dad was like, "You're taking steroids. This is so bad." And I was like, "Dad, it's literally protein powder." And I was like 21 at the time. So like completely an adult. Like I still lived with my parents, but he was just beside himself. So I would love to hear what that situation or dynamic was like with family.
In all honesty, they were so supportive of it. Cause like they didn't judge me. They didn't think anything differently. I was really, really privileged to where my mom, she would say, okay, if you want to just have chicken and rice for dinner, you can totally do that. But the rest of the family is going to have this. You can still obviously I still sat and ate with them, but my mom was like, this is your chicken. Don't touch Tianna's chicken. Like, this is for her. So it's like my mom respected that I had my own food, and I started cooking for myself when I was like 13. So from 13 to now, like I've just been making my own food, and my mom has learned to respect that because, she's Thai, so she loves to cook, and, Thai food is so, so, so good. And she, cooking is her love language to me. So obviously, like, when she cooks for me, it's like a treat and everything like that. But she was just like, okay, if you're not going to eat every meal I make, that's okay. I'm not going to get mad at you. Like, you're your own person. So she was really supportive of it. And, like, with all the supplements, like protein, creatine, she honestly didn't question it. She was supportive. She was like, I'm going to GNC because one of my coworkers needs this and that. Do you want me to pick you up some protein? And I was just like, oh my God, like, I have so much gratitude for that because, I was still 14, 15 at the time, so I couldn't afford to pay for everything myself. Even though I was like working and stuff, but she offered to pay for protein powder for me, and like when she did grocery runs and all that stuff, she made sure to get me like plain chicken and ground beef, this and that. So I had a lot of support from her, which is, I know not a lot of people have that support, so it's something that I don't take for granted ever.
That's awesome. And then my follow-up question to that was, what did you use in terms of like when you decided to start this journey, how did you navigate it? Like in terms of like researching programs, things like that?
So my first day at the gym, I signed up with the trainer at 24 Hour Fitness, and he was a bodybuilder. I didn't know that, but he was the one who initially told me, hey, you should compete one day. Like, you have the structure to do it. And at the time, I didn't know what he was talking about, but I was like, really? Like, I'm going to do some research. So then from there, I did research on figure, bikini. Wellness wasn't a thing yet. Because, yeah, that was 6 years ago. I remember researching bikini and figure, and I just remember being like, yeah, I'm definitely too small for figure. I'm only 14, so I was like, I'm just gonna like work towards bikini. So then from there, I went to YouTube. I watched like scientific videos, like Jeff Nippard. I'm sure everybody knows who he is. He's really educational, so I watched a lot of his videos. I watched Stephanie Buttermore, because she had competed in, I think she did like 2 shows or something. And I just spent my days listening to podcasts and YouTube videos about bodybuilding and about fueling yourself properly. And then I had the privilege of working with a trainer for 2 months, and he educated me on power building. So we started off with just compound movements and longer rest periods, because at the time health was still the goal. It wasn't really like aesthetic based at the time. We just wanted to make sure that I was gaining weight and being strong and helping my bone density and everything like that. So I started off with like power building. So I did a mixture of accessories and compounds, but just longer rest periods, like a power lifter, if that makes sense. So I kind of got education on powerlifting, bodybuilding, just all around. I was just able to absorb information from the resources, like with YouTube and the trainer and everything like that.
That's awesome.
You learn as you go too, which is one thing that I realized.
Yeah. And I had a similar question to sort of what Sammy was asking you about the beginning of your journey. You mentioned that you got into it healing an eating disorder, just shifting your mindset and getting healthier. If you're comfortable with that, because I think there are a lot of competitors that come into the sport with that backstory. If you're comfortable, can you share a little bit more about what that healing process was like, not just from, physical perspective of getting a trainer and learning the gym, but mentally, emotionally, like how did you go about that healing process?
So the physical process of recovery, I would say it took the physical and mental aspects, like all of recovery took about 4 years. So I started trying to recover when I was 13. And I remember being like, okay, I'm going to challenge myself to actually eat breakfast today. I'm going to challenge myself to realize that, hey, you don't need to run 2 miles after every meal, because the world is not going to end if that happens. And I speak for myself on this aspect of eating disorders just because everybody's journey is different. But my eating disorder also stemmed from having a severe case of OCD. So I felt like the world was going to end if I didn't exercise after every meal. I had a bad exercise addiction. So starting at 4 a.m., I set my alarm. I would do 30 minutes of just straight on HIIT cardio. And with HIIT cardio, you're only supposed to do like 10 to 20 second intervals and then rest and then do that. I was doing 30 minutes straight on, just my heart rate being at like 170 to 200, which is very dangerous, very dangerous. I don't know how I survived doing that for so long. So I did that before school, and then when I got to school, I would run up and down the stairs, like before the doors opened for the students to come in, because I got to school early. And then like throughout passing periods, I would run to every single class. I would go into the bathroom stall and do jumping squats in the bathroom stall. Like, it was, looking back at it now, like, it's just crazy to me that I did that. And it's honestly, I'm not like ashamed of it, but I'm definitely not proud of it. It's not normal, and nobody should ever do that. It's not going to lead you to your goals. It really, it like eats your body away, and I remember at one point I was just like, is this how I'm going to have to live the rest of my life? Like, is this how I'm going to sustain being fit? And the answer is no. Not at all. And I had a rude awakening. I basically, I'm trying to remember, I didn't pass out or anything, but I got an injury. And then at that point I realized okay, this is probably not the best thing to do. And even though I was trying to recover, because I was already eating a lot more food at that point, I was using exercise to compensate for the amount of food that I was eating. In my head, I thought that was recovery. It's not. Recovery is everywhere, like mental and physical. So I remember my dad sitting me down. This was the summer before freshman year of high school, and he was like, "Hey, your face is actually green and you look like dog poop." Like, I'm not gonna swear on here, but but he straight up told me, he was like, "You look terrible. We're gonna have to do something about this, otherwise we're gonna have to, go to a doctor." And I refused to go to a doctor or do any sort of inpatient or anything like that. I knew in my heart it wasn't gonna work, because I knew if they had, released me or anything, I knew that I would revert back to my old habits. So at this point, I was like, I just need to dig deep and find out why I want to recover. So my dad mentioned, he was like, "Okay, well, what are you so afraid of?" And I was like, "I'm just scared to eat a lot of food because my stomach hurts when I eat, because when you don't eat for so long, your stomach does shrink and it hurts to eat more food." Like, I remember looking at a piece of bread and being like, I have to eat a piece of bread that's this big. Like, I can't do that. Like, I'm gonna feel sick. Like, even though I wanted to at that point, looking at food made me feel sick because I didn't eat a normal amount for so long. So it was like, I wouldn't say it was force feeding, but it was realizing, hey, you're gonna have to push yourself to eat food. Like, I just had to realize, don't look at the calories, don't look at anything, just eat the food, because at this point you need to retrain your stomach, you need to retrain your metabolism, you need to retrain your mind to be accepting of food again. Because at the end of the day, relationships should be with people, not with food. And I had to understand that food is food, whether it's cereal or it's fruit. It's still a carb. It's still going to affect you somewhat the same way. Obviously, like, not all calories are created equally, but I just had to look at things without a moral lens, without dichotomizing things as good and bad, and just be accepting of everything that I was putting into my body. And I would say that was the hardest part, because for me, let's say I needed to reach like 2,000 calories. If I didn't have that mindset shift, I would have tried to reach those 2,000 calories through fruits and vegetables, versus being somewhat recovered. I realized, okay, I'm going to have rice, I'm going to have peanut butter, I'm going to have chicken, I'm going to have a lot of variety in my diet. So it was learning to have variety and realizing all of these things, whether it's processed or not, you can still have them. Like, you can still eat the food. You're not going, like, nothing bad is going to happen. So it was just retraining my mind, and it was up and down, trial and error. But yeah, that was pretty much, it took about 3 years to get to a point where I could just look at a piece of bread and be like, okay, I'm going to eat this. Nothing bad is going to happen. So sorry for that tangent, but that's like kind
No,
of.
that's not.
No, that was super important, because I feel like a lot of people go through that, and they do the opposite. Actually, they turn to bodybuilding almost as like a blanket for an eating disorder. They're like, all right, well, if I start competing, well, now I have more of a reason to restrict myself or have this unhealthy relationship with food. So I think it's super important to talk about that and bring light to that, because you can use bodybuilding as an aspect of recovery if you're doing it the right way, as opposed to just using it as a crutch and a excuse.
Exactly. And like, what I realized, because my first ever prep, even though like you're in a huge deficit for a prep, obviously, but I realized, okay, this is like 10 times more than what I was eating when I was still going through those eating disorder days and everything. So even when you're on prep, like, I'm not trying to speak for anyone, but I realized like a lot of our population undereats a lot, and we underestimate the amount of food that we need. Like, I remember in high school, I came across, like, I met a few people, and they only had like an orange for lunch and like a coffee in the morning. And a lot of people go throughout the day without eating and then realizing, oops, I need to eat at the end of the day. So bodybuilding kind of helps me realize you're going to need to constantly eat throughout the day just because muscle protein synthesis, all that stuff. I mean, there's no exact science to it, obviously, or like any like anabolic window or anything like that. But I do know that it's important to be consistently eating throughout the day, especially bodybuilding.
Yeah. And it's funny you say that and how a lot of people are under eating and don't realize it. This weekend literally went to the river with 2 other families and I had all of my meals prepped, like in baggies, like ready to go, timer set on my phone, and I'm eating and I was like, I'm the only one consistently eating. Like I was eating every 3 hours and everybody else was just, you know, hanging out and like no one was drinking. So that was really nice. Like there was no like pressure or anything like that. But I was like, everybody is significantly under eating. And like, of course I packed for my husband. So I'm feeding him as I'm eating. And then I'm just like looking around and I'm like, why is no one eating? I'm like, and I'm the one restricting myself right now, like, you know, to be a certain way. And I was like, wow. Like, and I was talking to my husband about that on the way home. I was like, everybody is significantly under eating, like for just their, not even just for weight loss or any type of like physical goal. I'm like, just for a sustainable life, like maintenance, like,
no, it's crazy.
It was,
I like my boyfriend's little brother, and I'm not trying to call him out or anything. He's just a kid. But I was just like, I remember one morning I woke up and I was just like, why are you having just goldfish? And he was like, oh, like I'll eat dinner later. And I was like, it's 10 a.m. Why are you just eating goldfish?
Yeah. Yeah. Just for, I mean, not even for fitness or muscle, it's like for brain function, right? Like for brain function, you need a healthy breakfast, ideally something with protein. And I think you're right. A lot of people, they don't realize that. Or I think with women too, what can happen just being a coach, and I'm sure Sammy, you probably see this too, is like the more you undereat too, the more likely you are to set yourself up on this pendulum of like undereating, overeating, and you just kind of swing back and forth. And sometimes learning balance, like what you've done for yourself, Tianna, is harder for a lot of people.
Yeah, and obviously like it's really, it amazes me how your stomach really can shrink when you don't eat for so long, because I remember just looking at a simple meal. It was yogurt, bread, and like an egg or something, and I was like, this is a lot of food. Like, can I split this up for the whole day? And my mom was like, are you crazy? You need to eat that in one meal. So it's like retraining not only your stomach but your mind to look at food. Now I see that and I was like, okay, that's a snack. That's just a snack.
You're like, I'm hungry looking at that. And it's funny that you say that you bring up your boyfriend's brother, because I mean I have 2 kids, so like when they wake up in the morning,
idea.
They're my stepkids, my stepchildren, but I have them, you know, Monday through Friday, so it's like they wake up and they're like just going about their day, and I'm like, you need to eat breakfast, and they're like, all right, I'll grab a granola bar, and I'm like, no, I'll make you eggs. We'll have some toast. We'll make some turkey bacon or whatever. I'm like, you need a full breakfast. Like, you have to eat food, because then they'll just go about their day and, you know, play outside or play video games, which is totally fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But it's like they just lose focus or lose track of time, and then they don't eat until dinner. And I'm like, what did you have today? And they're like, a bag of chips. And I'm like, oh my God, no.
I mean, for me, I now look at it, I'm like, how are you not hungry? Like, how do you forget to eat? But again, everyone's different, but now it's just crazy to me how it's like people unknowingly just go throughout the day and don't get hungry, or they're just too busy to think about food.
Yeah. And that's like one thing I tell all my clients. They're like, well, I just forgot. And I'm like, set an alarm on your phone. I'm like, that's happened to me. I'm like, trust me, sometimes I'm hungry and like I just know I'm hungry, but sometimes I'm so busy that I don't think about it and it slips my mind. But I have literally every 3 hours an alarm that says eat. And I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, let's go eat. And then like no hesitation, I'm like, you know what, I am hungry. I'm gonna go eat.
I remember this one time I had a hair appointment, and I didn't think it was going to be 8 hours long, so I just didn't bring food with me, and oh my God, I had my first meal at 10 and I got home at 8, and I was like, oh my God, and I still need to train.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a good reminder for not only like people who forget to eat, but also for me, just like to set that alarm to bring your meals no matter what, whether it's just going to be a 2-hour appointment or an 8-hour appointment.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Especially on prep, you don't want to be caught without your meals.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Errands take a little longer, especially 8-hour hair appointment. That's crazy.
Yeah.
I'm sure you were feeling it by the end of that.
Oh my God, I remember we were like in the middle of a conversation, and at that point I was just like, if you just give me a second, I'm just gonna stare at the wall for a second. I'm gonna like recollect my thoughts because I just couldn't think.
Like, I'm
That's
just
so
gonna try not
funny.
to pass out right here in the chair.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, what can I DoorDash?
Yeah.
You know, like.
Yeah, that would be me for sure. So
Mhm.
Tianna, I really appreciate too all of the things you shared with us. And I hope
Mhm.
it helps others because I think there's a lot of women and probably men too in bodybuilding that have a similar backstory. So I appreciate your openness.
No, I'm happy that you guys asked me that because I've never really gone in depth about like the exact trajectory and like the mindset food thing on a podcast before. So it was a good opportunity for me to share that as well.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you guys asking.
Of course. And then so I just kind of want to like follow the timeline along too and talk about
Mhm.
your competing and stuff. So then for you, you had your trainer, you're
Mhm.
building muscle, you're power building. What was the
Mhm.
experience of prepping for the first time like for you then?
Oh, it was life changing. Like, I know that's so dramatic, but it truly was because so my first prep, I started it in December of 2021. So I was still 17, but I knew that I was going to be starting prep when I was 16. Because right when I turned 17, I was like, okay, I'm going to do like a growth phase, and then I'm going to do a cutting phase, and then I'm going to do another growth phase and then prep. So it was like up and down, up and down. I do realize now you don't need to go through bulks and cuts in order to get to your goals. You can just main gain. Like it's not, you know. But anyways, I started posing when I was 17. So I learned posing when I was like 30 weeks out from the show, I believe. And then from there I realized and then I had to get nose surgery that same year. So I got nose surgery for a deviated septum, and then I was out of the gym for 3 weeks during prep. So I was like, okay, well, should I even do this? And I remember asking my mom, like, this is my first prep. Like, I don't know what to expect. I don't know what I should be doing in terms of like these 3 weeks of being off. But my coach at the time, she was like, you don't need to be doing cardio yet. You know, you're not at that point yet. So I would say I had a smooth sailing prep up until 8 weeks out. That was like crunch time for me. And I noticed with all of my preps, it's like the beginning and the beginning of prep is always the hardest because that's when your food gets cut a little bit, at least for me. So then you notice the energy dip, and then you kind of stabilize and your body kind of evens out, and then throughout the middle of prep you're just kind of cruising, and then towards the end it's kind of like crunch time again. So my first prep I experienced that like smooth sailing all throughout the beginning, all throughout the middle, and then at the end, when we were 8 weeks out, it was like crunch time because I could train again, I could do everything again. I would say physically, at the time, I thought it was one of the hardest things that I've done before, just because I'd never done like over 30 minutes of cardio ever before in my life. So to see that number increase, it wasn't anything that I dreaded. Like, I didn't mind doing it whatsoever, but it was kind of just like, you need to learn to occupy your mind for 40 minutes straight without going on your phone, without doing this and that. Like, you are forced to stay in one position for 40 minutes, like just like walking, biking, whatever, but it's the same thing for 40 minutes. So I had to learn to train my brain to just do like self-reflection and like envision things in my head and just kind of like manifest things during cardio, and it made the time fly. So I did that every cardio session, and that in turn just like changed my outlook on life. I remember envisioning myself on stage, and the second ever show that I did, it was Emerald Cup. I envisioned myself on that stage, and I was like, wouldn't it be so cool to win in front of my family and my friends? And obviously winning like, I wasn't in it to win, if that makes sense. Like, I didn't expect to win, but I just, you know, we always have that thought in the back of our head, like, what if I win? What if this happens? Like, I fantasized over it during cardio, and then to see it actually play out at my second ever show, the way that, like, exactly how I imagined it, I was just like, oh my gosh, like, and then I cried on stage. I was just like, this can't be real. Like, this can't be real. So those were like the highs and lows of prep. The hardest part was realizing that I am getting lean, and those feelings of like being lean in the past with my eating disorder, prep lean and eating disorder lean are two completely different things. And that was really reassuring to me because I still felt healthy, if that makes sense. Like, I still felt like, I know obviously in prep people might feel dizzy sometimes, it's normal, but it's just a different kind of feeling. You know, like when I was in my eating disorder, the feeling of dizziness, it felt like I could just collapse onto the floor, versus prep dizziness, it just felt like I was a little lightheaded, but I get some food, some water in me, I'll be fine. Just, it's like little differences like that. So it was humbling. It was also a really cool experience to be like, this is what health and like deteriorating yourself, these are the differences. And I knew that being in prep for bodybuilding, it's still significantly healthier than being in that past state that I was in, if that makes sense. So it was just really eye-opening for me, my first prep. I just learned a lot about myself. I learned about how important it is to not be so focused on who you're going up against, on who else is competing. It's truly you versus you. And I kind of made it a game. I made it a game where it's like, okay, I did this my first show, I'm going to beat this my next show. I'm going to bring conditioning for the next show. And it was like a game that I played with myself. What can I do better? And it was so eye-opening. And then when I was getting ready for my first national show, that's when I realized I want to start holding myself accountable to acting like a pro. And even though I knew I'm not pro yet, like I'm just starting, but I remember being like, okay, what would a pro do? A pro would be practicing their posing 2 to 3 times a day, not just like once for 5 minutes. So then I really upped that, and I just decided to like kind of do more of everything in a healthy way, and like look at it as another opportunity to challenge myself and another opportunity to hold myself to a certain standard, if that makes sense.
It does. Yeah. I relate to so much of what you're saying, Tianna. When I started competing, the exact same thing. I love to visualize during cardio. And that's so awesome. That's so cool that you had that win play out exactly how you imagine it in your mind. Like I got like the goosebumps just like hearing you say that. That's incredible.
So ill, because and I still do this to this day. Like I just envision myself. Obviously, I envision myself on stage doing my pro routine now and everything when I'm on cardio. But it's comforting in a way. It gives you reassurance that hey, everything that you're doing has a purpose and has a reason. You're doing this amount of cardio so you have more time to reflect and everything like that too.
Yeah, 100%. And it's like what you're doing, like every action has a reaction. Every action has a purpose. Like everything is coming together for one central goal that you have for yourself. And it's not to be better, like you said, than somebody else on stage. It's to be better than the person you were last time.
Exactly.
And it's like, that's super important too, especially like if your cardio gets high and you don't want to be there, like you don't want to be on the stairs for 40 minutes, but you're like, I have a purpose. I have a goal. There's a reason I'm walking right now. There's a reason I'm doing this. And just to be able to do it too. Exactly. Like that's another reflection too. It's like,
and I honestly, I mean, this year was huge for me, but I realized like the ability to just move, like me moving my hand right now, like that's honestly a blessing. There are people out there in the world that don't have the ability to do that. And it's like, if you really sit down and think about it, it's like all of us are so privileged to be able to just move. And especially in bodybuilding, to be able to push our bodies to these limits and like be lifting and like hip thrusting 500 pounds and like, you know, this and that. Cause like I think I speak for all girls when I say this, like we're strong in the hips. We can hip thrust a lot. So it's like thinking about it, it's just crazy how we can put that much load on on our bodies and everything. It's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're absolutely right. Prep is a privilege to have, right? To have the health, like you're saying, to have the free time, to have the finances. Like even as a pro, we know
Yeah.
that competing is not cheap.
Yeah.
Unless you're maybe top 5 at the Olympia and you've got some great
Exactly.
sponsorships and stuff. Like it's truly a privilege. And I also think that pressure is a privilege, right? If you're at the level
Yeah.
where you're a really good athlete, whether that's trying to turn pro or you're a pro athlete that's kind of like in the mix or working your way up, like that pressure to not only prep and have all the things that are needed, but to be at that level, to be one of the best in the world or one of the best amateurs out there, like that's a blessing. And I think
No, it
sometimes people
really
forget
is.
that.
No, really, yeah. It's crazy. Like there was a bodybuilding page and I saw a few of my friends got tagged in it and I was so excited for them because it's like they're getting the recognition that they deserve and everything. So it's just cool
Yeah.
seeing people
I
do
saw
well.
you tagged in, was it yesterday or something where it was
Oh,
like cruising the bodybuilding world page listed all
yeah.
the athletes that could
I
qualify.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
texted
So
after I texted him after and I was just like, you know what? Like, I'm just happy and I'm just grateful that I can step on stage this year and that I'm healthy enough to step on stage. That's a blessing in of itself. And no matter what happens, I'm going to be happy no matter what. Because it's like just being able to step on stage, whether you're a pro, you're an amateur, only like 2% of the population does that. So it's like no matter what happens, you're still like a part of that small percentage of the world that does what we do. So it's like it's a huge privilege.
yeah. And your point about as an amateur, and I want to definitely highlight this because I think a lot of
Yeah.
amateur competitors should hear this, of acting like a pro to
Mhm.
become pro. That's truly what it takes in
Yeah.
beating yourself. So what are some of the things you've done like in your journey from first time competitor now to, multi-season pro? What are some of the things you've done to continue to get better? You mentioned maybe posing more often. Like what are some of the other things you've done to continue to level up as an athlete?
So I would say the most important thing is mindset because you can do everything that you're supposed to be doing. You can do your cardio, you can do your training, you can do like your posing. But if your mind and your body isn't like just I don't know, like entrenched in it basically. If you're not super duper passionate about it, you're just going through the motions at this point and there's no purpose or intention behind it. So for instance, like if you're working out and you're just doing like you're just going through the motions, it's probably not going to do much because you're not thinking, okay, how should I be moving my body? For instance, if you're doing a hip thrust, like for me personally, I like to have a slight pelvic tilt so I can like really feel the contraction and everything. So it's like you have to think about pushing your heels into the floor. So it's a lot of intention goes into everything. So for me, it was realizing, okay, when I pose, I need to be understanding and asking myself, where do I feel this and where do I feel that? How should I move to achieve this specific look? So that's why, like, with my posing clients and everything, I tell them, like, when you're swinging your arm, you need to imagine that you're, like, painting a picture or, like, doing this and that, like, gliding your arm smoothly so it's not just, like, moving it abruptly or anything like that. So it's really just about doing things with intention and kind of like thinking about the underlying factors and the underlying message behind every single movement. And I feel like that's what separates a pro from like a beginner level is just being really mindful and not just going through specific motions or actions, but understanding that everything has its purpose. With cardio, yeah, you can do 40 minutes of cardio, but if you're just walking at 2.0 speed and you're just like, oh, like I don't want to be here, you're not going to get anything out of it. Versus if you have pep in your step and you're happy to do the cardio, or you realize, okay, I need to do this with some enthusiasm, some energy, then you're going to be burning more calories. So it's like just intention and purpose over everything.
Yeah. Yeah. I
So
love
that's
that.
the difference.
Yeah. Awesome. So, so I know you're prepping this year. Do you have show plans and things like
I
that for
do.
the season?
I think maybe mid-July.
In July. Okay.
So the one thing about this year too that I'm like excited about is that I feel no need to make some elaborate post being like, hey guys, I'm in prep now. Like, I love it when people do that, but for me personally, I was just like, you know what, I'm just gonna do this prep with my head down, because at the end of the day, this is basically a lifestyle. Whether you're on or off season, you're still building, you're still growing mentally and physically. So it's like, there's no need to like, you know, make this like some elaborate thing. Like maybe when I'm a week out, I'll make like an announcement or something, just because like it's fun to do that sometimes. But the difference between like this prep and like last year is like last year I kind of outlined and documented everything, and like that's great. You should always do that. Like it's your page, you should post that bikini pic, you do whatever makes you happy. But this year I was like, I think I kind of want to like document the parts of prep that I truly think will help my audience or help anybody that's getting into bodybuilding. So like the intention and everything behind it. So that's kind of like my trajectory this prep. But I'm excited to see both of you guys get back up on stage too.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's funny because we actually, I think it was Sasquatch.
Yeah, Sasquatch.
Last year. We competed at Sasquatch together, and I think that's where that was like the first time, because for the longest time I didn't really follow, like I followed people in the fitness industry as a whole, but never like fixated on competitors.
Yeah.
And I think that was the first time I had come across like your page and you in general, and I was like, so that's why I like started following your journey more. And then, you know, Laura and I were talking about having you on, and I was like, yes, we absolutely need to like.
I remember seeing you on stage, and I was like, she looks like a Disney princess. Like in Gilko, in
Thank you so much.
Video, he like showcased you doing your hair flip. It was so beautiful. Like in the Sasquatch video,
Thank you.
Watching it like during cardio for my next show, that was because I did legions after Sasquatch. I played that video during like the last 5 minutes of cardio, and every time your hair flip came on, I was like, I need to do it like her. Like it looks so awesome. Just
thank you. That's so sweet.
Yeah, that's why I love competing so much too, because it's like, even though you're not gonna win every single show, you're probably not gonna do well at every single show, you get to meet amazing people, and that's like hard about all of this.
Yeah.
Like 100%. And people with the same mindset as you too. It's like, or it's like even, you know, similar mindsets, but different outlooks, right? Like this conversation has opened up so many different just outlooks and ways of thinking for me too. So it's like just sharing that, like everyone has a common goal, but everybody looks at it a little bit different. Everyone's looking glass is different. So it's like to hear these perspectives or just these little like tips and tricks and things like that is super beneficial, because it's like, we all know that we have this same end goal, but how we get there is going to be a little different.
Exactly. And like, I feel like, yeah, we all have different outlooks, but just like our ways of looking at things or doing things, it can slightly differ, but we still have like that same passion behind all this. Cause I think, I mean, all of us can agree that we're doing this because it's not an interest. It's truly a passion, and we want to help other people. So it's like, I feel like that's the common denominator between all of this too.
Yeah.
100%.
The cool part is we can create these amazing friendships and, like Sammy said, meet other women who have similar mindsets to us. Not everyone likes to go into the gym and suffer. Not everyone likes to, you know, be hungry and doing all this cardio and practicing your clothing every day. And so I feel like I personally, it's like, that's how Sammy and I met. I've made so many of my best friends through competing now. And it's just, I think there's, like you said, you're not going to win every show. You're not going to do well at every show. There's so much about the journey that's really beautiful.
And one thing that I also really like about the journey and about competing in general, is a placing truly does not determine your worth or how like amazing you are, if that makes sense.
100%.
Last season I got 3rd call outs at Republic of Texas. I was like pretty much last place, and then a week later I got 3rd. So I went from 16 to 3rd, but my physique truly didn't change too much in between that week. It was just based on who showed up that day and like the caliber of athletes or just who the judges are and everything like that. And I realized, okay, even though I got 3rd here, like my physique isn't too different from what I was last year. It's just how the cards played out today. So it's also really nice knowing that it really could be anyone's day. And it's cool. It's like, it gives you curiosity, because it's like going into this season, I have absolutely no idea how I'm going to do. I might get third call outs again. I might get first call outs again. Who knows? And like, there's really no expectation. So it's just, it all stems from curiosity at this point, which is the cool part.
Yeah. And then that's what makes you push even harder, because you're like, all right, well, whether I get third or first, I'm still going to put my all into it, because I know that no matter what, whether I get first call outs or I get third call outs, I put my all into it. So I did as much as I possibly could to get wherever the judges see me in this lineup.
And also, like, what you bring on stage, it's just what you bring on stage. It's like the judges don't care if you've done 5 hours of cardio or if you've done 10 minutes, you know? And that was one thing that I realized, because last year I thought you need to push yourself to the point of like tears, blood, sweat, and tears in order to be deemed as worthy. No, you don't. It's work smarter sometimes, not work yourself to where you just don't know what you're doing at this point, if that makes sense. And I had to learn how to like find that equilibrium point and like resensitize my body to certain things too.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to learn what brings you in best. It's like, for me, being so much taller and kind of like skinnier looking in some ways, the shows where I've done best are the ones where I'm reverse dieting into the show and I'm doing the least cardio. So it's not always, you're right. It's not always like blood, sweat, and tears gets the best outcome.
And like with Ashley too, like she's at the point where she's not even doing cardio right now. From the last podcast and everything, they were talking about that, and I was just like, that's awesome. Like, it's so cool when people reach that point. And like, you know, Kimber's also at that point where she's reversing into shows and stuff like that. And like, it's just so cool to see that we all are able to like relate on this, or we're all doing different things, but at the end of the day, we're trying to achieve a specific look, which is to meet the criteria, which is so cool how we do things so differently.
Yeah. And then even too, prep to prep, like show to show, every show is going to be different. Every prep's going to be different. Like, there's things that I'm doing this prep that I've never done before, but it's working out great. So we're like, trial and error. Like, now we know for moving forward, this is my body responds best with this, or, you know, maybe next prep, it's not even going to respond to it. So it's like, right now we're just taking what we can, the information and the knowledge that we have. And, you know, it's a trial and error process, essentially.
Exactly. Yeah, same here. Like, we're doing things that I've never done before. Like, my cardio has never been this low, being like this far out into prep, if that makes sense. And I'm speaking too soon. It'll probably get bumped up, but you know, like, it's just like different things. No prep is the same, honestly, and I didn't realize that until this year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, what was some of the main feedback you got from your season last year? And then what have you done in the meantime to kind of execute on that?
So the main pieces of feedback was fuller upper outer glutes and rounder delts. That was my feedback pretty much every single show. But then my last show, they finally told me, you're just small. Like, you just kind of, you have the balance, you have the structure. Keep all of that, but just upgrade everything, if that makes sense. Just get bigger everywhere, but keep the balance the same. So basically, I just went back to square one, like how I first started when I was 14, and just built again. But obviously focusing specifically on the upper outer glutes and the delts. So, a lot more, like, I didn't realize how important, you know, like, obviously compounds are very important and they are like the primary building factors, but I didn't realize how important it was to truly properly execute kickbacks and just like these little accessory movements that I used to overlook and not do properly, because for the longest time I could not feel my glutes in a kickback just because I wasn't doing it correctly, and now I feel it like nothing else. And sometimes kickbacks are actually harder than squats. So like, just learning, reteaching myself these movements and like finding new ways to make the weight feel heavier without always having to increase the weight every single workout, because that's going to lead to injury, obviously.
Yeah.
Especially when you're lean. And I had a rude awakening with that this year too. Like, I definitely was increasing the weight a little bit too fast for a little bit amount of time. So I was like, okay, I just basically was like, I'm going to take a step back and I'm going to take a deload and resensitize my body to everything and just relearn everything. So I've had to do that like 2 times this year, and it's for the better, honestly. It makes me realize it's, again, intention, not the amount that you lift or anything like that. But
Yeah, you're so right. It's the tension in the muscle. Like the muscle doesn't know the weight you're lifting, but it knows tension.
Exactly.
So,
like yesterday with hip thrust, I did not increase the weight from like last week, but I focused on like explosive concentric slow negatives, pause reps, just stuff like that. And then I did like 2 extra reps on every set, and that's still progressive overload, And I always thought like progressive overload was upping the weight every single time, but nope, that's not it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's super important, because I feel like that's one thing that people, they're like, let me just lift as much weight as I possibly can, and this is what, this is what's going to build my muscle, and this is going to be, the end all be all. And then they get injured, and now they're out for weeks, and then now they have to start from square one. And it's like, sometimes like we just need to put our ego aside, take a step back, realize what our goal is and what is truly going to get us there without interruption.
Literally, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself, because like for me, again, I always was like, I need to lift super duper heavy all year round because that's what's going to get me density. No, that's like yes and no, it's like, it's the intensity and the execution, because your body can grow with intensity. It's like, and there was a really good analogy that one of my friends told me. They were saying how you could squat like 225 pounds for like 25 reps, or you could squat for 15 for 6 reps. You're probably going to grow more with the 225. And I was like, that's a good way of putting it. Obviously, nope, I don't squat 225 anymore, but that was just his.
Yeah. It's just, it's really about when your goal is, say, bodybuilding or aesthetics versus strength, like a power lifter. It's like, it's almost like you used an analogy earlier of like a paintbrush. It's almost like an artist or a sculptor. And it's like, sometimes you want to go in with like a chisel, and sometimes you're like really doing like detail work. Like we're working on our and the technique and the engagement and that mind muscle connection really matters.
Exactly. And plus that just prevents injury. I've noticed since I started training with more intention, I haven't been getting injured, which is great, because that's what we need.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
100%.
Yeah, and it just I'm so excited for you too, because I have a feeling like maybe who knows, maybe you two will do some shows together, or
that would be so fun. Are you doing Sasquatch again?
I don't think so.
No!
I don't. So like, it really just depends. So like, I have my first 3 scheduled or like planned and booked, and it really just depends on how I do at those that determine if I keep going.
That's true. Yeah.
So it's like, that one would be a good, I loved that. Like, I did really like that show. I loved the way it was ran.
Yeah.
It's somewhat close to me, so it's not too far, of a travel, but it really just depends on how I do in the first 3, that it's like, all right, am I taking another step back and going into another growth phase, or like, do I have a shot at qualifying and keep going?
Well, no matter what happens this season, I already know your comeback is going to be like amazing.
Thank you.
I'm so excited. And
I appreciate it.
Like, I'm excited for both of you guys to just step back on stage, because it's always so cool. You take a year off and then you come back and it's like boom, she's back. Yeah.
That's what you want.
Yeah. So cool.
I'll be excited for you guys. And then Tianna, if you end up in Southern California at any point or anything, like we'd love to do an in-person episode with you.
Yes.
I think there's a few shows in California this
Iron Games.
Yeah.
In September.
I want to do that. If it's not the same week as Sasquatch, I want to do that. But I might be.
It's not. It's usually, they're like back to back though.
Okay.
Iron Games is in November. Iron Games is November 9th.
Okay.
Yeah.
I really.
I feel like it's not. I feel like it might not be a Bikini Pro show this year. Let me see if I can.
Yeah, I heard that it was like
it's normally always Bikini Pro, but Muscle making some switches. So if I can get it to load.
Are you guys planning to go see the Olympia in person or no?
Yes.
I'm trying to, but I think my son has a race that weekend.
Yeah.
Wait, let's see.
I went last year, and oh my god, it's
Hopefully I'm competing in it.
yeah.
That's really the goal. Hopefully I'll be there in it instead of watching it.
I know, manifesting that for everybody here.
Yeah. Well, I don't think I'm competing this year, so I'm
Next year for sure.
next year. Yeah, it's on my list of goals. It's definitely something I'm working towards. It's just different. Like your comments about placing, I really like, especially I've learned this lesson before. I really had a mindset shift last year because I'm such a different athlete and such a different build. And no one my height has ever been to the Olympia bikini. So I realized that
history.
I know. And that's what I would like to do. That's what I'd like to do because I do get a lot of messages from like tall amateurs that they feel kind of the way I feel sometimes, where it's like, you feel like, okay, does this even make sense for me? Is this really a thing someone like me can do?
So awesome because you're doing this because you want to inspire people that are like dealing with the same things that you are dealing with, if that makes sense. And it's like you're representing those who are like, should I even compete because I'm this height or like that? And that's so awesome.
Yeah.
We all have like our own niches that we want to represent.
Yeah. It's a good reminder for me to just like be positive and be grateful. And I've come so far. I was like a little twig when I started. Like I was so, I wouldn't say I had an eating disorder, but I definitely had a lot of patterns of undereating. So I really, I do relate a lot to your story, Tianna, and in your mindset. There's a lot of things you and I are wired. I can tell we're wired very similarly.
Yeah.
So I'm taking my time. And the cool thing is like, I've had to learn to enjoy off season. So I'll get to like, come watch you ladies. I know I'll be at one of the shows. So if you do end up doing, say, Patriots, I'll be there. I'll probably be at some of the other shows. I did check Iron Nashville. I'll be at as well in August.
Really?
And then, yeah, I'll be there. I've got a couple of amateur girls competing. It's really fun. Nashville is a really fun show because it's all women. And the venue, all women. So it's pro and amateur, all women. So there's only a few shows like that in the whole world each year. And the venue is cool. It's this arena music hall. So it's really big. Not that the crowd is like fills an arena, but it's an arena. And there's a ton of room backstage because they basically just section off a whole area of the walkway and stuff. So there's just like plenty of room. It's, they have the cute like purple flower wall. The promoter, Whitney Weiser, does a good job. So I've done it the last 2 years. So it's a good time. It's a good vibe.
I remember because I was looking at your stage shots and I was like, wait, is that Nashville? I like didn't read the backdrop, but I just saw that it was purple. I was like, this isn't Sasquatch. It's definitely Nashville.
Yeah, I did Sasquatch 2 years ago, the first year they had it. And then I've done Nashville the last 2 years. So I think
Did you do it when Jen won?
Did I do which one?
Did you do it? Was it 2021? Did you do it in 2021 or in 2022?
In 2022, I did Sasquatch. Oh, so that was the first year of Sasquatch. And then in the Nashville, I did 2022 and 2023.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
It's so crazy. Bodybuilding makes the years go by so fast.
I know.
It's
it really
like
does.
Crazy.
Yeah, last episode we were talking about how the perception of time gets so warped. But yeah, even in off season, I'm like, oh my gosh, we're about to be in July. Like, where did the year go?
Yeah. No, I was just like, how is it already July? Like, it was just January, like yesterday.
I know. I was just writing resolutions. How did we get here?
So, it feels like I just graduated high school, even though I graduated for 2 years now.
Yeah.
I still feel like kids sometimes.
Yeah. I feel like it must be something about our focus, and maybe just also too, like sometimes our days kind of feel like the movie Groundhog Day where every day repeats.
Yeah.
Very similar.
It's a blessing in disguise though. You don't have to, like, if you have anxiety or stress, you don't have to think too deeply about anything because it's the same thing every day.
Every day.
Yeah. So if we can find some opportunities to maybe like do an in-person recording, we'd obviously love to do that. And hopefully we'll all be at the same place at the same time at one of these shows.
Yeah.
In the future. We'll definitely stay in touch. But before we wrap up and let you go, Tianna, what do you want to promote? I know you're a posing coach. Like, do you have other things that you want to mention, or how can people find you and get in touch with you?
So I'm on Instagram and TikTok. My username is basically it's my name, all lowercase _ IFBBPro. I do posing coaching. So I work for Team Elite Physique. So I do posing coaching for Team Elite Physique athletes and like non-Team Elite Physique athletes too. So I do posing coaching for everybody. You can just DM me, and there's a link in my bio on TikTok and Instagram. But
And we'll link everything in the description, show notes, all that stuff too.
But I mean, that's pretty much it. I have YouTube. I don't really post on it that much. I should, but I just feel like maybe not yet.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, for the most part, like I just kind of want to like leave off on a good note, just like reminding everybody that like it's always intention and execution, not perfection, that like leads you to your goals and everything like that. And I always like preface that on every post, but just want to put that out there one more time.
So you read my mind. I was going to ask you what your biggest tip would be for people that look up to you. So I think I don't know if that would be it or if there's something else you want to share.
When you say that, like, if for people who look up to you, it sounds so like strange because I look up to everyone else, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Like I see you as my role models and everything, so it's like crazy when you say that out loud. But
yeah, I think we all learn. I think we all learn.
Sure.
And get inspired by each other, and also I feel like we kind of, at least I'm wired this way. I feel like we get like girl crushes on one another, of other athletes, because we're all amazing in our own way. But think about back when you started, right? Like you were a brand new competitor 2 years ago. So imagine if you were to go back to that point, like what's the biggest piece of advice you would give to like your younger self?
I would probably say stay grounded always, and remember that if your heart is truly in the right place, if you truly feel strongly about something, just do it. Don't care about what other people say, what other people think. And I know that's so cliche. Everybody says that, but it's honestly so true. Once you learn to stop caring about outside noise and like seeking validation from others, a whole new world truly comes to play. And it's honestly a really beautiful process. And also another cool thing is when you're in prep, whether it's your first or like your 20th prep, there's always that part of prep when you can look at yourself in the mirror and you know that everything that you've been doing has led you up to this moment. It's like that feeling where you finally feel like, hey, I think I can do this. I think I can like pull something off here. I think I'm worthy. Just keep doing what you need to do every single day with purpose and passion, and you will be able to reach that point, whether it's like sooner or later. It's like, it's one of the best feelings ever. I felt it right before I turned pro. I'm sure you two have felt it before too, where it's like you look at yourself and you realize, hey, this is all just happening for a reason, and I'm so thankful for all the ups and downs. So just keep working every single day. Just put your best foot forward, and you will achieve, whatever it is that you want to do. So
Absolutely.
Again, more tangents. I always go on
tangents. No, it's been amazing. So thank you so much for being on Bikini.
Having me on here. It's honestly such a privilege. I was so excited to do this.
Yes, well, we can't wait to share this. So thanks everyone for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, review the podcast, and we'll catch you in the next episode.
Yay.